Welcome to another Listener into Lead podcasting tip, where I'll be sharing 30 tips on how coaches can begin to nurture listeners into leads while positioning themselves as a trusted authority with their very own podcast. Want to get leads and business from your podcast? You're in the right place. Hi, this is Anne-Marie and welcome to another Listener into Lead podcast tip for coaches and consultants who want to launch a podcast to nurture listeners into leads, get clients and build their business with a podcast. This is tip number 7. Now, one of the most common questions I'm asked by coaches who are thinking of starting their podcast is, where do I start? So in this tip, I want to share what I share with them and actually what I share with all of my clients and my community. So where do you start when it comes to your podcast? You start with the end in mind, but not just any end in mind, but a specific end in mind, because specificity is key. For instance, a goal of, I want to build visibility and brand awareness with my podcast. That is not specific, nor is this specific. I want to grow my podcast downloads to 1,000 per episode. That's not specific either. Now, if we look at these two examples, being more specific with the first example of, I want to build visibility and brand awareness with my podcast, this could become, I want to build my visibility and brand awareness as a trusted authority, as a coaching consultant for high-earning real estate agents in the commercial real estate space, helping them go from 7-figure to 8-figure deals. That's far more specific, isn't it, in who you're targeting, what you want to become known for, and the outcome, the promise of value and promise of expectations for your ideal listener and obviously your ideal client. Let's have a look at the second example, where originally we said, I want to grow my podcast downloads to 1,000 downloads per episode. Being more specific, we could say, I want to build a highly engaged community of multi-6-figure coaches who are ready and need support to take their businesses to 7-figure incomes, with my podcast playing an integral role in my relationship building strategy and constantly growing to 1,000 plus downloads per episode. Far more specific. Both of those examples, I'm sure you would agree, went from quite broad statements to specific and highly focused statements. Now, you might be asking, well, why is this so important, Anne-Marie? Because being specific is going to allow you to be more focused and strategic in your planning, the content that you share on each and every episode, how you position yourself, your intro, your outro and call to action, where you share your podcast, the keywords and phrases you use, the topics that you select. All of that is impacted by the outcome, the goal that you have, the end in mind that you determine. So, tip number 7, when starting a podcast, where do you start? You start with the end in mind. And that end in mind is having the clarity and specificity when it comes to your message and monetization strategy for your podcast. I wonder, let me ask you a question. How clear and how specific are you when it comes to your podcast and the overall goals you want, your end in mind? I'll see you in the next tip. Do you feel like the world's best kept secret and thinking about starting a podcast to build your visibility and reach? Or maybe you've started a podcast but you're just not generating the results you'd hope for. Go ahead and access my profitable and purposeful podcasting masterclass, where I'll show you how, with the right strategy in place, you can begin to nurture listeners into leads from your very first episode. Go to www.podcastingwithpurpose.com/listener into lead. That's podcastingwithpurpose.com/listener into lead.